There is a crow out there right now that remembers your face. Not crows in general, you, the exact face. In the year 2008, a scientist named John Marzluff pulled a rubber mask over his head, walked onto a university campus in Seattle, trapped 7 crows, clipped small bands on their legs, and let them go completely unharmed. He never bothered them again. But for years afterward, whenever anyone put on that same mask and stepped outside, the crows lost their minds, screaming, mobbing, dive bombing the second that face appeared. 17 years later, they were still doing it. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Most of the crows attacking that mask had never been trapped. Some of them weren't even alive when it happened. The original 7 had taught them. A parent pointed out a human face to its children and said, in whatever a crow says, that one is dangerous. And the warning outlived the birds who first gave it. So a crow can hold a single human face for a lifetime and hand it down like a family heirloom. And it isn't only crows. Ravens do it, magpies do it. The whole clever black-feathered family keeps a running list of which humans to trust and which to avoid. It also runs the other way. There are crows in that same city that leave tiny gifts on a windowsill for the child who feeds them. Same memory, opposite sign. Now, widen the lens, because this is not a bird thing. An elephant can listen to you speak and tell from the language alone whether your people are the kind that hunt it. A humpback whale can recognize one specific boat out of hundreds crossing the same water 30 years after it last saw it. In 2016, researchers at Oxford trained a fish, an archer fish with a brain no bigger than a pea, to pick one human face out of dozens it had never seen. A crow, an elephant, a whale, a fish. 4 brains that share almost nothing, that split off from each other hundreds of millions of years ago, and every one of them can lock onto a single human being and hold on. None of these are pets. Nobody trained most of them. They are wild, and somewhere inside each of them sits a memory with a human being's name on it. Which leaves one quiet question that turns out to be far harder than it sounds. Do wild animals remember the humans who saved them? The grudges we can prove. A scream is easy to measure, but the other direction, the diver who cut the net, the ranger who carried the calf home, the person who simply let it go, that one hides. Here's the moment that makes the question impossible to walk away from. A few years ago, off the coast of California, a female humpback whale got tangled in hundreds of pounds of crab trap rope. Line wrapped around her tail, her fins, pulling through her mouth, so heavy it was dragging her down toward the seabed. A team of divers slipped into the water and spent about an hour cutting her loose, one rope at a time, their hands inches from a body big enough to kill them by accident. One of them said later that he stayed near her eye the whole time, and the eye stayed on him. When the last line finally fell away, she didn't bolt. She swam a slow, wide circle, came back, and nudged each diver in turn, gently, before she vanished into the blue. Every person in that water will tell you she was saying thank you. Every marine biologist will tell you we cannot possibly know that. And that gap between what those divers felt and what science can actually prove is the whole story. So over the next few minutes, we're going to walk it. A crow that files your face under danger for 17 years. An elephant that hears a threat in your accent. A lion that spent a year back in the wild and still knew the 2 men who raised it. We start at the cold, hard end of the science, and we move toward the warmest thing you have ever seen an animal do. Start with the bird, because the crow is the one case nobody can argue with. Go back to that campus in Seattle, because what Marzluff had stumbled into was much bigger than a few angry birds. He kept the experiment running for years, and in 2011, he published what he found. The crows didn't just remember the dangerous mask, they got better at hating it. Every year, more birds joined the mob, in a widening circle across the campus. Even though the trapping had happened once, long before, the knowledge was spreading through the population like a rumor with wings. Then Marzluff did something clever. He slid crows into a brain scanner and watched what happened when they looked at a face they had learned to fear. The part that lit up wasn't only the visual system, it was the region that, in you and me, handles fear and emotion. For a crow, seeing a face it has marked as dangerous isn't a cool little act of recognition. It feels feels like something. And here is the flip side, the part that matters for our question. In 2015, a girl in Seattle named Gabby Mann started feeding the crows in her yard, and the crows started paying her back, leaving small objects on the feeder where the food had been. A bead, a button, a bent screw, a single pearl-colored bead she kept like treasure. Marzluff himself vouched for the story. The exact same species that will hunt a threatening face for 17 years will also, if you are gentle with it, bring you presents. The memory works in both directions. Now move up in size. In 2014, a scientist named Karen McComb, working in Amboseli in Kenya, played recordings to wild elephants. Just human voices, saying the same calm sentence. Look over there. A group of elephants is coming, in 2 different languages. One belonged to the Maasai, whose young men sometimes spear elephants in fights over cattle and water. The other belonged to the Kamba, farmers who rarely trouble them. Same words, same tone. The elephants bunched together and edged away from the Maasai voices, and stayed relaxed for the Kamba. They knew which kind of human to fear. They even calmed down when the Maasai voice belonged to a woman or a boy instead of a grown man, because the men are the danger. That is an instinct. That is a memory of us, sorted and filed by who has hurt them and who hasn't. And it lives longest in the oldest heads. Researchers who have watched Amboseli for decades found that the old matriarchs are the ones who remember where the water hides in a drought, and which humans to run from. Lose her, and the whole herd loses its library. But so far, this is all fear, and fear is a sharp teacher. Some animals go the other way. Some of them choose to work with us. In the forests of Mozambique, there's a small brown bird called the greater honeyguide, and it does something almost no wild animal does. It leads people to honey. A honey hunter makes a specific call, a trilled brr, passed down for generations, and the bird answers, flies ahead, tree to tree, guiding him to a hidden nest of bees. A scientist named Claire Spottiswoode measured it. When the bird and the human team up, the human's odds of finding honey jump by 560%. And the birds know their neighbors. In Tanzania, the Hadza whistle instead of trill, and the local honey guides answer the local sound far more often than a stranger's. The bird has learned the accent of the people it works with. And off the coast of southern Brazil, in a town called Laguna, wild dolphins have herded fish toward waiting fishermen for over 100 years, slapping the water to signal the exact instant to throw the nets. A team led by Mauricio Cantor put real numbers on it in 2023. When the dolphins help, the people catch nearly 4 times as much fish. The dolphins and the fishermen know each other as individuals. None of these animals had to do any of it. They remember specific humans because somewhere along the way, a specific human turned out to be worth remembering. Which brings us to a lion named Christian. In 1969, 2 young men in London bought a lion cub. You could still do that then. From a department store called Harrods, of all places, and raised him in their apartment above a furniture shop. When he grew too big for a city, they did the hard, right thing and flew him to Kenya, where a conservationist named George Adamson, the man behind Born Free, taught him, slowly, how to be a wild lion again. A year went by. Christian joined a wild pride, hunted, lived the life a lion is meant to live. The men were warned he probably wouldn't know them anymore, that a year in the wild rewrites an animal, that they shouldn't get their hopes up. They flew back anyway. And when Christian came down the hill and saw them, he stopped dead. Then he ran, not to attack, but to throw his front paws up onto their shoulders and push his head into their faces, the way he had as a cub. A fully wild lion, with every reason to have forgotten 2 humans, remembered. A film crew caught it. The clip sat almost forgotten for decades, then went around the world online, nearly 40 years later, and made a generation of strangers cry. He came back to camp the next year and did it again. The second time, the men were told he had a pride of his own now, a mate and cubs, and might not come at all. He came. And the story goes, he brought them with him, as if there were 2 people he wanted them to meet. Now, here is where we have to be honest, because the honesty is the whole point. Christian was hand-raised. The crows, the elephants, the whale were not. And even for Christian, we can prove the memory, the recognition, the specific response to 2 specific men. What we cannot prove is the feeling behind it. This is the wall every single one of these stories slams into. We can measure that the animal knows you. We cannot measure that it is glad. Go back to that whale off California, circling in to nudge the divers sailors who cut her free. The memory is entirely believable. Whales hold on to boats and voices for decades, and an hour of humans working around her body is exactly the kind of moment a whale brain is built to keep. But the thank you, the gratitude, that lives on the far side of a line we have never once managed to cross. And maybe that is the real answer to the question, do wild animals remember the humans who saved them? Yes, the memory is real. It is specific, and it can last a lifetime. A face, a voice, a boat, filed away and carried for years. What we can't do is climb inside that memory and read how it feels. So we stand outside it, the way you stand outside everyone you have ever loved, guessing at the warmth from the way they move toward you. You remember the people who were kind to you. So does the crow. You carry a face for years. So does the whale. You keep the ones who saved your life somewhere you can't quite name. So, it seems, does the elephant, and the lion, and the bird on the wire. The only real difference is that you can say how it feels, and the animal can't. It can only come back. A memory is not the same as a thank you, but it might be the closest thing an animal has to one. So, the next time a story goes around about an animal that came back, the whale, the lion, the crow that leaves a pearl on a windowsill for the child who fed it, you don't have to decide whether it's science or sentiment. It is both, and it is neither. And it is the most honest kind of mystery we have. Somewhere out there, a crow is watching a human face right now, deciding what to file it under, danger or friend. It will remember either way, and it will carry your face far longer than you will ever carry its.